Hello there. Thank you for tuning in again. Today, I will be going over the removal of the gas tank, the removal of the fuel pump from the gas tank, and then the reinstallation of both on the F250 here. So, well, I actually won't be putting the tank back on because I need to get some fuel line, which I'll show you here in a minute. But I'll go ahead and start with how we take the tank off. So, we come back here to the back of the pickup. Pardon my shadow and the wind. So the fuel tank is held on by two clamps, straps, brackets, whatever you want to call them. They're probably technically called straps. There's one there, and it bolts on right there. And then there's another one right over here, and it sticks behind the, what's it called? It sticks behind the mounting bracket for the leaf springs, and then it bolts on right there. Now, they're probably a little rusty and going to be a little bit hard to remove, but if you are patient and you use some WD-40, they should come out just fine. The straps do hinge there on both sides, but only on this side of the pickup, which is the driver's side. On the other side, where they're bolted up into the frame, they do not hinge. So you keep that in mind. When you're dropping the fuel tank, my advice, you do what you want, but my advice is to block it up and then use a floor jack to lower each end as you can. Especially if your tank has fuel in it, I would recommend using a jack to lower it. You don't just want to, drop it on the ground. Because there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. One of them are these fuel lines. Now they're taped up right now just to help keep dirt out of them, and they were dripping gas, and I don't want that all over my mat. So your fuel lines, and I'll show you where they ride on the pump housing here in a minute, but they'll be about right in here. You'll want to pop those off before you drop the tank, and there's also an electrical connector on the fuel pump housing that you will want to unplug before you drop the tank. Furthermore, there are two rubber lines, and I'll crawl under here so you can see them. There are on two ends of the tank. There are these rubber lines attached to. One is right here, and the other one goes right over there. I've got it off now because I needed to size new line. This is the electrical connector. This is what powers your fuel pump, and your fuel level sender is also tied into that apparatus. Right in there, you have 1, 2 pieces of rubber line, and then your third one is for one of those hoses. Down there, you've only just got one chunk of rubber hose. My advice, and again, you do what you want, but my advice is to go ahead and replace all that rubber line while you're down here. It might be okay on the inside, but on the outside, it gets kind of crusty. I know this is about 20 years old, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it. As soon as I can find some, I'm going to replace it just because. Now, they're just held on by hose clamps, nothing fancy, just a pair of pliers to loosen those, move them back, pop them off, put new on. That's kind of what it looks like under here. Keep in mind, when you pull your fuel lines off, pay attention to which line they go into on your fuel pump housing, because, well, one's for return and one's for suction, and so if you swap those, you're going to have problems. It's not going to be fun for anyone. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here's the other side of one of those straps. It just bolts up into this plate right here for the frame. But that's where your fuel tank rides. Those are the lines and stuff you need to disconnect. Oh, also, you'll want to disconnect your filler hose and your return hose for filling your gas tank. Or your overflow, I mean. You want to remove those. Gosh, stumbling over my words already. So, this is the fuel pump housing. This is what sits down in the tank. This is the actual fuel pump. There is an electrical connector that plugs in right here, and that's what runs your pump. That's the outlet, and then down here is your filter sock where your suction is at. Now, it is kind of dirty. I've cleaned some off. In fact, I've cleaned a lot off, but I guarantee you when I pulled it out of the tank, it was filthy, and there was it wasn't any wonder to me why it wasn't pulling fuel, because see all that dirt and sediment? That was inside that chamber there. So let me see if I can get this set up here. So your fuel pump housing sits up like that, and then your pump sits down in there like so. It may not be on that side, actually. It might switch around, but it sits, the point is it sits in there. And then this top piece, if I can zoom out, the top piece goes on like so. There are 3 screws that go in here and right there that hold it on, and they're right there. They are very tiny screws, so don't lose those. They're important. The top, yeah, your whole assembly fits down. That sits in the bottom of your tank. This is what is on top of the tank and what rests there. So what you need to pay attention to when you're taking your lines off of your fuel tank, when you're dropping your tank, you want to pay attention to which line goes here and which one goes here. I marked this line with tape so that I know, you know, that line plugs onto this side and then the other line plugs onto that side. And then of course this here is your electrical coupling. There is a tab right there off the end of my thumb. You'll need to take a screwdriver to press that down fully, and then it'll just pull right apart. When you are disconnecting your quick coupling for your fuel lines, you'll have a fuel line removal tool, which is that right there, and you'll want to stick it over, you'll be sticking it over your fuel lines, and you'll be shoving it up into the coupling, because inside of that coupling there's some fingers, and by sticking that tool in there you pry those fingers apart, and that's what allows the line to get back over this lip here and come off. Now oftentimes that gets full of dirt, so if you have some trouble getting your tool in there and your lines won't pop off relatively easily, spray some WD-40 in that connection. That should clean out all the dirt and gunk, and you should be good to go. I will get back into the assembly of the new pump here in a minute. I want to go show you guys the tank right now. So the fuel tank on this, I believe, is 35 gallons, and it still had some gas in it when I pulled it off. And I haven't found a way to siphon it out yet, but that's where your fuel pump assembly is going to sit. Now, when you put it back in, it should only be able to go in one way. But when you pull it out, there are a couple of tabs on top of it that you want to squeeze in. You want to push the housing down a little bit to release it, and then you want to pull it out. And you want to do all of that while you're squeezing those tabs. Now, the assembly should come out relatively easily. If it does not, then that means one of your tabs is caught. Well, you can't see with my hand in there. But if it won't come out easily, that means one of your release tabs is still caught. So you may have to reach in on one side or the other of this housing in here and pop that tab off of the little tooth manually with your finger or a screwdriver one, and that should allow it to come out. But it should come out easily. It should not be very difficult to get out. Blah. Get my words straightened out here. So the whole assembly, that once you get your pump and stuff down in there, you know, your hoses and your wires just kind of ride in there. They're insulated, so you don't have to worry about fire or anything. You know, the designers do kind of know what they're doing. And then that metal plate rides on top right here. There's a seal that goes around in here. You want to make sure that's clean before you reinstall everything. There are 2 grooves cut, one right there and one right there, and that should allow you to locate your plate on top to get it back in the correct orientation. Just make sure your lines are facing the same way you took them off, which should be that way, because there's your filler and overflow tube, so naturally your fuel pump line should be pointing that way. But just pay attention when you take everything off. There's an arrow right here. There's another arrow on that plate, and you'll want to line those up. They're not exact, but they're pretty close. And like I said, by the time you get it locked into these grooves and you get those arrows lined up, everything should be pointing the right way. The next thing you do to retain it all is put that ring back on. And of course, you got to take the ring off to get the whole thing out, you can use a pair of oversized channel locks. You can use, there's a special tool, so I'm told, that you can use to release that. Or if you're a farmer, you can use a 36-inch pipe wrench, and that works really well. Just be careful. You don't want to round these little lugs off here, or gussets, or whatever you'd call them. You don't want to round those off, but you shouldn't. If you get a solid grip on it and break it loose, a couple of turns, it should be all right. Then, yeah, to put everything back in, you just drop your assembly in. It should snap into place nice and easy. You make sure you have a new seal in here and everything's clean, and then you just secure it all down with the ring. So right here and right here are where those rubber lines attach to on your fuel system. You want to make sure you hook those back up, and then there are hose clamps that hold them on there. They should pop off relatively easily. The hoses from here, I mean, they should pop off relatively easily. These do not come out, to my knowledge. That's not supposed to come out, and neither is that right there. Now, of course, you can undo the cable clamps and pull all the hoses off, but none of the rest of this is supposed to come out. When you have your tank off, you want to look in there, and there's a little bit of dirt and grime in there, but it's not that bad, honestly. But you want to make sure your tank is clean. If you have the ability to drain it and to put it in the buckets, like, well, I do, then I would do that. Keep your tank as clean as you can, and then when you put fuel in, just make sure your hoses are good so your hose isn't chipping on the inside, dropping gunk into your tank, and then just make sure you put good clean fuel in when you fuel it. So to reinstall the fuel pump that I have is this one right here, and hang on here. That's the part number if you are interested in getting it for yourself. This is, again, for a 2001 Ford F250 with the V10. So the new pump, there's a rubber piece that goes up on top here. It moves. That just sits on top. There's a piece that goes on the bottom right here. You put this piece on first, then you put your small filter sock on. It's a pretty tight press fit. And then there's that little tiny, I don't know what you'd call it, like a securing washer or whatever. And you got to press that on there just to make sure that doesn't work loose over time. They also send you a couple of like retaining clips here. That's just a plug that was in the pump. But they also send you a couple of retaining clips. They send you a new large filter sock for the outside of the housing. And they send you, not there, but they send you another retaining ring for this, depending on the setup you have. In this case, for this filter sock, it just snaps on the outside of the housing. I'll show you in a minute. And there's no way to get one of those little securing washers on there. So I'm not worried about it. And you don't need to be either. They send you, and they're right here, they send you a couple of those rings for your mounting groove there on your tank. I've set those in the sun so they can kind of warm up. It was a bit chilly this morning. They were kind of stiff. But you get all that on, and you should be good to go. So set this out here, and I'll grab that too. So, like I said, your fuel pump assembly is pretty straightforward. You want to make sure that's the old pump. Oh, where is the, let me get situated here. All right, so on the, just be careful with your fuel level sender right there, because that's easy to bend and break. So right here is where your new filter sock plugs in. It goes just like that, and then there's a little tab right there, and that locks everything into place. I'm not going to assemble it right now on camera because I can't do this one-handed, and I want to take the air compressor and blow this housing out really good, make sure I get it as clean as I can before I put it all back together. And then once I've done that, I don't know if I'm going to drain the tank or not. The gas in it's good. It would be easier to put the tank back on if it was empty, but I haven't decided yet. If I do drain it, I mean, you guys will know, but I haven't decided. But I know I'm going to get this put back together, and then I'll get it back in the tank, and when I get my new rubber fuel hose, I'll put that on down there and be good to go. It's not really that hard to do this. About anybody can put this together if they're just patient and, you know, they pay attention to stuff. I mean, I can do it, so you can do it too. Oh, right here is a little connector to plug in your fuel pump. There's a tab on there that you press in to release it, and it pulls right out of that. That's what gives you your power, and that's what your fuel level sender wires, of course, are all connected into here, and then they run back to the engine and your instrument cluster. So that's how you drop that, and that's how you reassemble that. I'm going to put it back together off camera, and then when I put the tank back in and make some more progress, I will make another video to let you guys know. But I appreciate you watching. I'm going to get to work, and I hope to see you back again.